What's up, everyone? I'm CL Connolly, and today I just want to tell a little story. So it is my writing/reading backstory. So my mother tells me that I learned to read right around the time that I was 3. And she says that it was because I was sitting up on the counter in the kitchen while she was cooking dinner, and I was reading. Oh, I don't even have that book up here. I was reading Green Eggs and Ham, which I still have, by the way. I still have that same copy. And I wasn't really reading it, but she noticed the words were in the right order and the story was correct, which means I had it memorized. But when she turned around and looked at me like, oh, you know how to read the book, she realized the book was upside down. And no, I had no idea how to read the book. I was reciting it from memory. So she was like, oh, time to teach her how to read. So my mother taught me how to read. As a matter of fact, that is exactly how my son learned to read. So what my mom did was she decided that since I was able to learn how to read at an early age, she did the same thing with my son. So she took him on a Friday night and I got him back on Sunday. By the time I got him on Sunday, he was reading. And I was like, what? Of course, he was reading the Dick and Jane books, which basically has the same phonetics, similar to like Dr. Seuss does, where each word basically rhymes in a way. So you kind of understand how words are put together and everything. And it took my son a week to understand those words and the phonetics of them on how they were put together in order for him to start reading other words. And he got to start reading other books. And the same thing happened with me. I figured out the phonetics on words and how they were put together and the way that the letters made sounds and everything. So we were able to basically learn to read at an early age. And my mother tells me about this time when I was in first grade. And she keeps saying that she wished that she had kept the story. So the teacher allowed us to write stories or something like that. We got to write a story. And I wrote this whole story about this queen who would cut off the heads of, the people in her kingdom and stuff like that, right? And I don't think anybody actually thought about it at the time, but we'll get to that. So the teacher actually calls my mother and tells my mom, hey, by the way, is everything okay at the house? And my mom's like, yeah, why? And she's like, well, your daughter's kind of creepy, And it was funny because they were saying that I had written a story that was inappropriate for first graders, right? Which, okay, I don't know how creepy it was, but whatever. And my mom tells a story about this queen who would cut off the heads of the people in her kingdom. And I was like, dude, first of all, if it was first grade, I'm willing to guarantee that it is a story about, say, Alice in Wonderland, when she goes down the Red Queen because she's always shouting off with their heads. That was the only thing I could think of because it was first grade. So seriously, come on. Well, as I progressed through school and everything else, and we got to high school, my teacher used to always take my English teacher in high school. She would always take my notebook away from me. She would never let me have the notebook that she knew that I was writing stories in. She would not let me have that during class. And the reason why she wouldn't let me have it during class was because she knew that that was the story I would be writing when she was trying to give the writing prompts and not the story that I was supposed to be. So she ended up asking me one time, it was my junior year teacher. She had asked, she says, can I read your story? And I said, absolutely. So she starts reading my story. And then after that, every time she handed out a writing prompt, she gave me my own writing prompt because she always told me, she said, your stories are great. She said, the stories that you write when you're not supposed to be, she goes, those stories are awesome. She said, but whenever I give you a writing prompt, she goes, the stories are all over the place. She goes, it's not right, I guess you could say. There wasn't a linear story to it. It was just kind of like, blah, 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 here you go. And she said, I do a lot of tell in the writing prompts, but in the story that I'm writing that I'm actually passionate about, she said there's a lot of show, not tell. Sorry, there was something on my desk. And she said, it's so much better. And she didn't understand why. And I said, because I don't give a shit about what you're giving me. I don't care about that story. That is not anything of interest to me. And I said, this that I'm writing is actually interesting to me. So she started giving me my own writing prompts in order to give me something that I'm a little bit more passionate about. And I thought it was awesome. Like, she was able to figure it out from the story that I was writing, or any of the stories that I was writing, on the actual writing prompt to give me, so that I would be a little bit more passionate about the story that I was writing. And there's another time, I think I was 5 or 6 or something like that. And I remember running into my parents' bedroom. My mom's in the bathroom and I'm like banging on the door. My mom goes, what do you want? And I was like, I read this word and I'm so happy. I know what this word is. And she says, what's the word? And I was like, it's sophisticate or sophisticated or something. I don't know why I remember that word. It was like sophisticate or sophisticated or something like that. But I remember being very proud of myself that I was able to read that word, because I kept thinking, I was like, I read a big word. But anyway, so as high school progressed and everything, I was like, cool, I get my own little stories and stuff. But of course, my senior year was totally like turned upside down and completely crazy, because there was a lot of different things that were going on. I only had half days due to the fact that I had co-op and I got to leave and go to work and all that other stuff. So senior year was totally different. And I took senior English at a different school. So I only had to take it for the first semester, and I didn't have to worry about it later. So anyway, so my reading had advanced to where, and I think this is actually funny, because there are some times where I will use words that my parents will actually ask me, what do these words mean? And I remember I used to read the dictionary sometimes just so I could memorize what the meanings of certain words were. I don't know why I did that. I just thought it was funny. And I'm pretty sure that it also had something to do with the fact that there was a family member who used to always get so mad whenever my mom and I would talk and we would use big words and stuff. And she'd go, I don't understand what you're saying. And then she'd get so mad and like walk away. And it was like, okay. Like, it doesn't matter. Who cares? So the conversations that I would have with my mother were a little bit more adult at like 15, 16 years old compared to, most 15 or 16-year-olds. And it was always nice to be able to have that with my mother and stuff like that, being able to have conversations where I didn't feel like I was being treated like a child. But then, you still have to have those conversations like you're being treated like a child. I'm so disappointed in you, kind of thing, But anyway, so I had a book that I had written shortly after I graduated. I had my son and I had my first job, and I was like, no, I'm going to be an author. And at 6 years old, I knew I wanted to be an author. I was going to write books for a living. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write books. So I knew at 6 years old that I wanted to be an author. I would write all the time. So I'm right-handed, and my right hand, it's not pretty. I can barely handwrite a lot of stuff nowadays because of that snap that my wrist does. But that's beside the point. So when I first graduated, I was in my apartment, in my very first apartment, and I started writing this story. And I always wanted to write stories that were basically about fears. Like, what are you afraid of? And because I had just had my son, my biggest fear was someone climbing into his bedroom window and stealing him. I used to put big pieces of furniture in front of the window, right? Even when I lived on a 3rd floor apartment and the only thing on the outside was like a far drop. There was not a balcony outside that window. There was absolutely no way they could get to that window. I still put big pieces of furniture in front of that window because I was terrified somebody would, climb into the window and steal my baby. And I was like, no. So I had written a story that basically was about that. Someone got their baby stolen. They had to go find it, blah, blah, blah. And I had done so much editing on that book that eventually it got to the point to where I was like, I hate this story. It is awful, it is ugly, and I do not like it at all. So I'd given it to my mother to read. And I knew that my mother could be very, I wanted her to be very critical. And I do not get butthurt very easily. So I'm like, I need you to be brutally honest. I am not the type of person. I need you to be brutally honest with me. I want you to tell me to my face what you don't like, right? So be brutally honest. And she had no problem doing that. And she actually told me when she gave me back the manuscript with notes on it, she says, I don't think you're passionate about this story. She said, I'm just going to say that now. She goes, it's not very good. She goes, and I've read some of your other stuff. There was an entire series of books that I wrote in junior high in spiral notebooks, which I still have, by the way. But I will not publish that story that I know of. Anyway, no, I'm not going to do that. I wrote it while I was in junior high. I may be able to edit it to make it better, but I don't know. Anyway, so this story, when I had given it to her, she says, I don't feel like you're passionate. She goes, I want you to write something that you're absolutely passionate about. She goes, and then we'll see how that goes, right? So I did. Now, the very first time my mother had read this book, she immediately was, I'm sorry, what? A little creeped out by the whole premise of the book, right? And at that point, I was married. And my husband, I was telling my husband about it. And he actually said, do I need to sleep with one eye open so I don't wake up with one leg cut off? And I was like, no, you're fine. So I'm very creepy. I am absolutely crazy in my head, in my books. So if you ever read my books, yes, I'm okay. I promise I'm okay. It is very funny in a way if you think about it, because I know several different ways to poison someone. I also know how to bury a body without it getting found. I'm pretty sure that I could probably dissolve a body in acid. Like I would know the right way to do that. I've done a lot of research. It's not the knowledge that scares most people. I think it actually is. I don't know. I think it's more of the fact of whether or not I would actually do the actions. No, I would not. I would absolutely not do any of those actions. I like knowing these things. Let me put it that way. I like knowing these things only because if someone wants to say something stupid to me, I can be like, oh, so I own just a little over 3 acres and I know how to bury a body so it doesn't get found because of the cadaver dogs. I know how to poison someone where it won't be found in an autopsy due to the fact that 9 times out of 10, they're not looking for it in an autopsy. And unless they're specifically looking for those things, they won't actually test for it. I also know different types of poisons that metabolize differently in your body. So one of them will actually metabolize slower. So it will shut down your organs very slowly. And it can cause death hours after being exposed to it due to the fact that, it's a slow metabolizing poison, but you could be away from my house and end up in a car accident. And, it looks like an accident. They're not going to test for poisons then. But I do know about it. There's also several different types of poisons that are delayed reactions where it'll drop like that, but days later. So you can't, I'm just saying, there's several different things that I know how to do. I'm not saying I'm ever going to do it. Like legit, it's just to know that information to put in my books. I promise. I am crazy in my head, and that is all. But when I wrote Forbidden Affair, the title was kind of like an ironic thing because the main character, she is being stalked by a guy who believes that they are in a relationship. So it's technically forbidden that they are even in a relationship because she's dating a different guy and it's an affair. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was kind of an ironic thing. Did I mean for it to have any connotations with a romance novel? No, I did not. Family affair is, where she actually finds the family, yeah, that, was that she was abandoned from, like, the mother and, several other family members. Fundamental Affair. Fundamental because it basically is first. And yeah, so it's like the first affair type thing. It is her childhood, the main character's childhood, where you get to see how she grew up in the foster care system and all of the awful things that can actually happen in the foster care system. Any awful thing that you can think of, it's happened to her. So there's an awful thing. And the only reason why I wrote that one third was because of the fact that there are characters in Fruitful Affair. Fruitful because she is pregnant in that book. And no matter what anybody says, it is not a vagina that is on that book in any way. It is a pillow that I cut up, put blood in, because it's supposed to be a makeshift C-section that someone did on their kitchen floor when they tried to cut her baby out. But anyway, so there are characters in Fundamental Affair from her childhood that pop back up in Fruitful Affair. And that's why I wrote Fundamental Affair third. Now, Fundamental Affair does end where Forbidden Affair begins. So it is kind of like a linear type story. But either way, it's okay. So that is my writing/reading. And my reading has advanced very far. I don't really care for nonfiction. I'm going to put it that way. I don't care for nonfiction unless I'm looking for something specific. Like, I have like books about serial killers, like true serial killers. So I do have true crime books and stuff like that. I do have writer's reference books. Those are the only nonfiction I will read, if that makes sense. So it's writer's reference and things like that. But I prefer fiction books. Some of them, a lot of the books that I read, they don't have to be intellectual, because I will tell you that Hemingway's books, some of them are actually insufferable to get through, because even his writing, you can tell that he felt like he was better than everyone else, if you know what I mean. Edgar Allan Poe is a good one, but it took me a little while to actually figure out what he was trying to say, because they're from, olden times. I do love Shakespeare. Shakespeare is probably one of my favorite books to read, his plays and stuff like that. Lord of the Flies. I love Lord of the Flies. There is Of Mice and Men. I do have that one on my bookshelf. I love Of Mice and Men. Some of the classics. The classics are something that I actually love reading. Right now I'm reading the Dexter series. If you've ever seen the TV show Dexter, that's what I'm reading right now. It's the series, the entire series. It's 8 books. And I'm actually enjoying it, only because I love the TV show. So there you go. My son has read Fahrenheit 451 at least, 4 times. He has read the Harry Potter series several times. He likes, there's that one book I cannot think of right now, but there is one that my mom could not get through because she said she didn't understand it. And I can't remember what it is, but it's also another classic. And my son loves reading classics as well. There's that. And I think it's great. Now, he didn't really care for Lord of the Flies, and I don't know why, because I thought Lord of the Flies was great. I have Lord of the Flies and Of Mice and Men on my bookshelf, and I loved those books. And I only have them on my bookshelf because I bought them for my son to read, and he said he didn't really care for them. And by the time he got to high school, they weren't reading those books. And I was kind of upset about it, but whatever. And they didn't do Shakespeare either, which is, come on, people. Let's do some classics. Anyway. So, yeah, I was writing forever. Now, Forbidden Affair was published in 2012. Friendly Misfortunes was published in 2014. And then I didn't publish another book, which was Family Affair, until 2019. But there is a gap in there because I had a job. I was the operations manager at a office supply store. And being a manager is very difficult when you're trying to manage employees with a store manager, because I was just a department manager, but with a store manager who was a dick and didn't want to do his own job. And then I got it. though, you know, they talk about delegating responsibilities to the employees. Don't delegate the store manager's job to the department managers because you don't want to do it. And then ask the department managers why they can't get their job done. Bitch, because I'm doing your job. Oh, you're supposed to delegate. I'm not delegating the shit to the employees because they got other things to do. And I have to get everything done. And I'm not going to sit here and wait for them. Hello, have you done it? Hello, have you done it? No, forget it. I'm just going to do it my damn self. And thus, in turn, comes the indie author. Yes, I would rather do it myself. Anyway, that is all I have. If you would like to hear more from me, like, comment, share, subscribe, or don't. I don't give a shit. Do whatever the fuck you want. But I do post new videos every Monday and Thursday, so there's that. Anyway, that is all. Okay, bye.